Ever driven down a dark highway where the trees are clustered so close together and the silence feels heavier than the night itself? That's where I found myself one evening, on a road I thought I knew better than any other. But something out there caught my attention, something that made me pull over when I probably shouldn't have. What I saw on that stretch of asphalt still doesn't make sense, and I don't think it ever will. I spent much of the summer of 2020 restless and looking for any excuse to travel. The country felt quiet and uncertain, but the roads gave me a sense of escape. I lived in Florida at the time and took every opportunity to head out on road trips, usually combining them with hiking trails or small-town stops. By September, I planned my first real journey into Alabama. My route carried me through Mobile, where I booked a few nights at a historic hotel so I could explore the city and nearby coastal areas. Back then, I did not put much thought into the paranormal. I had watched shows about haunted places but laughed them off as exaggerations or tricks of editing. I had always considered myself grounded in reality. What happened during that trip, however, carved a permanent mark in my memory and changed the way I look at strange experiences. It was the first evening of the trip when I checked into the Admiral Preston Hotel, a building that towered with old Southern charm. I had no idea of its reputation. Guests and staff whispered about shadows in the hallways and footsteps in locked rooms, but I was oblivious to all of it until later. To me, it was simply another elegant old building with creaky floors and vintage decor. My friend Daniel and my cousin Mark came with me on the trip. That evening, after we settled into the fourth-floor room, they decided to run down the street to pick up drinks and snacks. I stayed behind, claiming I was tired and wanted to relax for a bit. The moment they left, a heavy stillness crept in. I have always been a little on edge in unfamiliar places, but this felt different. It was as though the walls themselves leaned closer, pressing down on me. To keep from spiraling into nerves, I pulled out my phone and put on a video. Just as the sound began filling the room, the overhead light flickered once and then died completely. I expected the entire floor to go dark, but when I opened the curtain, the glow from the hallway and streetlights outside remained steady. Only my room had gone black. It felt like the air thickened suddenly, pressing in from all sides. I thought about leaving right then, but forced myself to remain calm. As I slowly stood, I caught sight of something moving in the corner of my vision, near the entrance door. For a split second, I thought I saw someone standing there, but when I blinked, the space was empty. My breath caught. I wanted to bolt for the hallway, but my legs would not fully cooperate. Instead, I half walked and half ran towards the door, convinced something unseen was about to step out from behind me. Just as I reached the entryway, a sound froze me. From the bathroom came the unmistakable sound of running water. The faucet had somehow turned on. Water gushed steadily into the sink. We had not touched it since arriving, and I was certain it had not been running earlier. The fact that it started the moment I tried to leave filled me with an unease stronger than anything I had felt before. Forcing myself forward, I wrenched the door open and ran barefoot into the hallway, the patterned carpet rough beneath my feet. I waited by the elevator, heart hammering, until Daniel and Mark returned from their errand. They found me pale and wide-eyed, too shaken to properly explain. Together, we went back into the room. The light had returned as if nothing had happened, and the faucet was off. Even with the comfort of company, I hardly slept that night. The following evenings passed with less activity, though the atmosphere never softened. On our final morning, curiosity pushed us to ask the front desk attendant if anyone had ever reported unusual happenings. The clerk smiled faintly, but avoided a direct answer. His silence said more than words, quietly hinting that the place held its share of mysteries. Years have passed, but that night in Mobile still lingers as the most terrifying encounter of my life. I had entered the trip dismissive of anything ghostly, but I left with an understanding that some experiences defy explanation. I swore never to stay at that hotel again, and even now, when I think of the 4th floor, I can picture that flicker of movement by the door and hear the faucet running all over again. Ever pulled off the highway for a quick stop, only to realize you picked up more than just gas and snacks? That detour was supposed to be nothing, just a break on a long drive through the desert. But what followed us from that stop revealed itself in a way we'll never forget. Welcome to the stretch of road past Ghost Town, where passengers don't always need an invitation. The trip from Salt Lake City to Ventura had already been long, but neither of us minded too much. Road trips always carried a kind of thrill, even when the miles dragged on and the scenery blurred into desert and sky. My friend Lily sat in the passenger seat, keeping the playlist going while I focused on the highway. By late afternoon, the sun was sinking low, staining the hills with orange light, when we noticed a faded sign pointing to an exit marked Ghost Town. The name caught our attention immediately. Curiosity tugged at us, and since we both needed drinks and gas anyway, I pulled off the interstate and followed the cracked pavement toward a tiny, run-down gas station. The place looked almost forgotten. The paint was peeling from the building, and one of the fluorescent lights above the door buzzed in a half-dead flicker. I told Lily I'd run in to grab some water and snacks while she stayed in the car. Inside, the air smelled stale, like old cardboard and gasoline, but the coolers still hummed, and I found what we needed. On the way to the counter, I remembered something we had joked about earlier on the drive: California's 15-cent bottle credit. Sure enough, the clerk charged me extra, and I made a note to tease Lily about it when I got back to the car. When I stepped outside again, the desert air felt sharper, heavier somehow. I opened the driver's side door with a grin and started telling Lily about the bottle charge, but she didn't laugh or even smile. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and distant, as if she'd seen something strange. It reminded me of that haunted look in The Sixth Sense, and the change in her unsettled me instantly. Before I could finish my story, she interrupted in a strained whisper. "Can we go? Please?" I froze with one hand still on the seatbelt. "What's wrong?" I asked her. She finally tore her gaze away from the dashboard and looked at me. "Your seatbelt," she said slowly. "While you were inside, I heard it clicking, like it was fastening and unfastening itself. The button kept pressing in and popping back out. And there was no one here but me." Her words sent a chill through me. The car had been locked, the desert lot empty, yet she looked shaken to her core. I buckled up quickly, started the engine, and pulled us back towards the highway. For several miles we rode in silence, each of us lost in thought, neither wanting to say aloud the fear that sat between us. After about 5 minutes, Lily clicked on the dome light and twisted around to grab something from the back seat. As I glanced at a passing highway sign that read, 30 miles to Los Angeles, I said casually, "Hey, we're only 30 miles out." She didn't answer. The silence pressed harder. I repeated myself, this time turning slightly towards her. "Hey, did you hear me? Are you feeling any better?" She stared at me with an unreadable expression. Finally, she whispered, "Yeah." There was a long pause, and then she added, "No." Her voice wavered as she spoke, and a chill ran down my arms. Minutes slipped by, the road stretching endlessly ahead, when she suddenly asked, "Did you say something about 30 miles?" I gripped the wheel tighter. "Yeah," I replied cautiously. "I said that 5 minutes ago." She swallowed hard, looked down at the drink in her lap and muttered, "I need a drink." I frowned. "You already have one right there." She blinked in confusion. "When did I open this?" "About 10 minutes ago," I answered. The look on her face twisted my stomach. She shook her head slowly. "The last thing I remember is leaving the gas station." Our conversation tapered off after that, leaving only the drone of the tires and the low hum of the radio. My nerves were stretched thin. I could feel Lily's eyes on me, and when I turned my head, bracing for her stare, I realized she wasn't looking at me at all. She was holding up her phone, angling it at herself. She was taking selfies in the dim glow of the dashboard light. It struck me as odd, almost surreal, but before I could ask why, she gasped. Her face drained of color as she scrolled back through the photos. "Pull over," she demanded, her voice sharp, urgent. "Please, at the next exit. Now!" I obeyed without hesitation, pulling off at the first ramp. We both got out of the car, the night air cool against our skin. She thrust the phone toward me, and my stomach turned to ice. In one of the photos, taken just seconds earlier, there was a faint shadow that looked like the outline of someone in the back seat. Their head was turned toward me, their face obscured in shadow, but their presence was undeniable. For a long moment, we stood in silence on the empty roadside, the hum of traffic distant and thin. My pulse hammered, but I forced myself to speak evenly. "You can't come with us?" I said softly, directing my words toward whatever presence might have been there. "You need to stay here." We stood there until the panic slowly faded away, until we felt steady enough to get back into the car. Once we did, the tension faded away. The rest of the drive into Ventura was quiet but calm, and nothing more disturbed us. Still, I could not shake the thought of that shadow in the back seat, staring at me through Lily's camera. That night, when I finally lay down in bed, I thought back to the name on the exit sign, Ghost Town. I wondered if what we had seen was tied to that place, if something had been waiting at that forgotten station for someone to notice it. Whatever it was, I knew it had tried to hitch a ride with us. And for a few miles of desert highway, it had succeeded. Ever been driving late at night and seen something so real you can't shake it? Even when it disappears right in front of you? That's what happened to me on an highway that seemed to stretch on for miles. I wasn't tired, I wasn't imagining things. But then came the wrecked car, the man waving me down, the vanished figure that left only silence behind. What started as another routine drive home turned into an encounter that made me question reality and wonder if the road itself remembers tragedy. I have always enjoyed long drives, especially at night. Something about the quiet hum of the tires on the asphalt and the way the road stretches into darkness has always calmed me. Driving has been my way of unwinding, a kind of meditation that clears my head. Over the years, I've spent countless hours behind the wheel, often with no destination in mind, just letting the headlights carve a path through the dark. Night driving has never unsettled me, at least not until one particular night that made me question everything I thought I understood about the road. A couple of years ago, I moved with my wife to a popular tourist spot along the coast. The town itself was beautiful, with beaches, boardwalks, and seafood joints that attracted people from all over. The trouble was, there was only one major highway leading in and out of the area. That road was a nightmare. Because of the constant flow of out-of-state drivers, reckless speeding, and limited patrol presence, accidents seemed to happen almost daily. To make matters worse, I had already been in 2 wrecks within the same month, a T-bone collision that left my car in the shop, followed by a rear-end accident less than a week after I got it back. Driving that stretch of highway had started to feel like a gamble with fate. Still, life demanded I use it every day. My commute to work carried me along long, isolated sections of that road, where thick swampland and marshes stretched endlessly on either side. The trees were heavy with moss, and the air was always damp, carrying the smell of water and rot. At night, it felt like you were traveling through a tunnel of shadows, with only the faint reflection of your headlights bouncing off the glassy water beyond the guardrail. I had seen many wrecks over the years, and whenever I passed one, I'd stop briefly to check if anyone needed help or had called for assistance. That was the kind of road. This was dangerous and lonely. One evening after work, I was headed home along one of those isolated stretches. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, and the only light came from the headlights slicing through the dark. That was when I noticed a silver four-door sedan pulled off on the shoulder ahead of me. At first, I assumed it was just another stranded driver. As I drew closer, the passenger side door swung open and a man stepped out. He waved his arms frantically, as though signaling for me to stop. Immediately, my stomach tightened. The front end of the car looked badly damaged, the hood crumpled as if it had been in a collision. I slowed down, pulled over a few feet behind the car, and put mine in park. Everything about the situation told me this was just another accident, another person who needed help. But as soon as I stepped out, the scene changed. The man who had waved me down was gone. The car sat in silence. The driver's window shattered, its seats soaked from the previous night's rain. The air smelled damp, mixed with the faint scent of rust and rain. Leaves and grass clung to the interior as if the wind had blown them in during the storm. I walked slowly around the vehicle, calling out a tentative, "Hello?" But there was no answer. I peered into the surrounding marshland, half expecting to see someone stumbling down the bank or lying injured among the reeds. The only sound was the buzzing of insects and the occasional rush of cars speeding by in the opposite lane. My heart thudded as I circled back towards the vehicle, each step making me more aware of how alone I truly was in that moment. The car bore no indication of being tagged by police as abandoned, which was standard procedure for wrecks. That meant either no one had reported it, or it had appeared very recently. Yet the rain-soaked seats told another story. This vehicle had been here through the storm, untouched, unmoved, and apparently unseen by anyone who might have passed. The strangest part was the vivid memory of the man stepping out and waving me down. I could still picture his face clearly. This was not some shadow in the corner of my eye or a trick of headlights. He looked real, desperate even, as if begging me to stop. And yet, there was nothing. No footsteps in the mud, no trace of movement, not a single clue that anyone had been there at all. After standing frozen for a moment longer, I finally climbed back into my own car, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel. The unease followed me all the way home, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, I felt certain I had seen something I was never meant to. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. On my drive to work, I glanced toward the same stretch of road. The car was gone. Not towed, not left in place with a police marker, but completely gone. As though it had never been there in the first place. I have thought about that night countless times since. The most logical explanation would be that I imagined it. Some combination of exhaustion and paranoia after years of dealing with wrecks on that road. But I cannot dismiss the clarity of what I saw. That man had a face, features I could recall in detail. It was too distinct to be an illusion. The only explanation that makes sense to me now is that I had witnessed some kind of residual haunting, an imprint left behind by trauma. A tragic wreck on that lonely road could leave an imprint strong enough to replay itself again and again for anyone passing at the right moment. Whether it was a ghost or some other phenomenon, I cannot say for certain. All I know is that night, the lonely highway showed me something I cannot forget. It was not the kind of fright that makes you scream, but the kind that settles inside you and lingers, making you question your own senses. And every time I drive that road, I cannot help but glance at the shoulder, wondering if one day I will see him again, waving me down from the shadows of the swamp.